free media.
Yeah, in terms of the side about the media, I would say it comes down to the different perspectives held by the Belarusian elite and the Russian elite, and their different priorities when it comes to foreign policy and domestic policy as well. Because I mean, Russia, despite its democratic failings, I mean, I would say the Putin government and the Medvedev government before it, I mean, they're still keen to build ties with sort of Europe. You know, they're quite keen on this idea of relations with Germany, with France. They want to be accepted, and to be accepted by the sort of wider international community, they need to be sort of acknowledged as not being authoritarian. So you sort of have this idea of sovereign democracy, or variations, special kind of Russian democracy. Whereas I think Lukashenko gave up on any kind of meaningful relations with Europe quite a long time ago, and he's sort of, I mean, his whole stance is that yes, we don't disown our Soviet past and the Soviet way of doing things. We like to we're fine sort of taking care of ourselves and doing things in a slightly more Soviet way, which includes having an ideology, right? And he's very open. He thinks that having a state ideology is good for the country, and that the state should serve that purpose. I mean, the Russian media, I mean, I think it's changing now a bit with the Russian media, because I've seen, there was one great interview that Radio for Europe had on with a Russian journalist that said, our state TV channels are just as impartial as the BBC and CNN, because they essentially see themselves as doing for their country exactly what BBC and CNN are doing for the UK and US, sort of looking after their interests in a sort of great information war. So yeah, now they're sort of, I think they perhaps would be more open about defending national interests, but at the same time, they're not, they haven't gone to the same extent as Belarus in saying, we have this ideology and we're open in standing up for this ideology. So it comes down to the difference in elite priorities, I think.
Let's talk about ethics forms, or ethics in general.
As I said, I'm following this sort of situational approach, when we decide case-by-case basis, and I guess it will answer your question in a way that you do what works with a particular participant or a piece of maybe part of your research. Sometimes it can be that you approach a university, and in this sense you just say that there is a requirement, because we have an ethics committee here before you do your research, so you can put this in your application and explain. But when you're in the field, you obviously make maybe sometimes different decisions, and they can fill out the form for you. For example, the deal, just says, okay, everyone fills in, and if it's what you want, if it's not effectively studied, maybe you would be happy with it. I personally had an experience sometimes when I had two ethics forms. Before the interview, something very, very formal, or maybe a verbal consent, but then after the interview, because I knew who my participants were, and I knew a little bit, we were worried what we would disclose, but because the interview didn't touch any sensitive issues, after conducting, they knew that, yeah, they're okay to sign it because they were safe. So maybe you could do even, it's a lot more paperwork, but at the same time, it really makes it safer for you as well.
Joanna, did you also experience issues with ethics, or how to deal with this issue?
I mean, I followed UCL procedures for ethics forms, which are time consuming and seem like a lot of paperwork, but yeah, at the end of the day, you're covering your back, you're covering your university's back, so yeah, and I didn't have any negative reactions from the people I gave, because apart from the survey, when you do a survey, you don't need ethics forms because it's all anonymous and sort of different. Yeah, I did do interviews as well with some of the students, so I did have the interview participants sort of sign it and say, I've been informed what this is all going to be used for, and I'm happy for it to be recorded, and they were all quite, some of them even said this looks like a very professional way of doing research. I think it created a good impression rather than a negative one.
Just to add my own experience with that, I interviewed presidential advisors former government members and MPs for my PhD research on presidential activism in Central and Eastern Europe. As these were all publicly appointed or elected officials, I was exempt from ethics approval. But for example, I still been applying for registration as a new data protection officer. Every university needs to have one now, according to the UK Data Protection Act. I stated in my application that no consent forms would be used simply because it's really difficult to get all the parameters of the code to sign something in a different language. Deputy Prime Minister, right? So I think this is also sometimes can be a situational approach to this. A few of my reforms felt much more comfortable after I had something they could sign, but in the end it didn't really matter. Okay, now we have two more general questions. What about the role of networks in research and in how we need them? I mean, Rob, you already said that we need to schmooze the top guys.
Well, yeah, depending on where you work.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say at the start was that like you can parachute into some situations, but you don't have the understanding to find nuances. Full context isn't. Then other situations you do need to be looking at, otherwise you're going to end up either in a lot of trouble or just being stalled. Networks are good.
Yes.
The answer, but you don't have to have. But I guess
Yes.
the quality of your work.
And now when you went into new fields, have you found strategies that were really working well for building up a network? I mean, this is also something that usually is something for us researchers when we get into a new environment to build up contacts.
Yeah, you just have to try and make friends with the local journalists and not too upset that you'll come back to their turn. And maybe it's similar in academic studies. There's lots of other people doing what you're doing.
I would agree 100% that yeah, they're incredibly useful and they improve the quality of the information you get usually, but they're not sort of critical to the point that you can't do research without them. I mean, with the doctoral work I did with the journalists in Kiev and Belarus. In Belarus, actually, I was massively helped by people I'd met through the Belarusian Society at Oxford University, which is where I did my PhD. And so it wasn't that I directly knew people in Belarus. Well, there was somebody my supervisor knew that helped me sort of with visa stuff, and then there was, yeah, through the Belarusian Society at Oxford, I got in touch with a journalist who put me in touch with all her friends, and it sort of, so you can have you can start from a very sort of small core of contacts, and then it can sort of work from there. And even with the work that I recently was doing at the Higher School of Economics, I mean, essentially that whole project, I mean, in the end I came home with, over 500 survey questionnaires in less than 2 months, which was, I was quite happy with that. And it all became possible because I'd met somebody at the BASI's conference in April who is quite senior at Higher School of Economics, and she sort of opened doors for me. So I mean, that I hadn't had any particular context there. I met somebody at a conference, got chatting, and she was brilliant. And then and then once you know somebody, then you meet all their friends, and then they open more doors, and it's sort of take it from there. So it's, yeah, networks are important, but if you don't feel that you have them, don't despair. You can make them.
Are you mainly working with more established networks in your work, or do other qualitative researchers tend to keep contact with respondents or something, let's call them respondent friends, over long periods of time? Is there something you come back to, or face another problem with establishing new networks?
I think having a network is a good start, but at the same time, I think that it maybe can give you more advantage to start your own in some way and to rely on participants to lead you through their own network, because you need your own network for your sort of protection and safety and for security, but then establishing new points of entry and following the lead of your participants can open you not just the doors, but actually show some dimensions and hidden networks as well. So in a way, going back to your questions, can you do a good research without a network which is in place? Yes and no, in a way, depending on your research question, but not having it can be a good thing as well.
Okay, we also had a question, how do we deal with people with strong opinions, or as I showed you once, some people might see as one-sided view that we were getting after, or just, yeah. Yeah, strong beliefs, oh yes, strong beliefs, yeah.
I mean, I can perhaps start, because I mean, my whole direction of my current research is trying to understand views about the West, and some of those are naturally going to be quite strong. And when I was out there sort of doing the interviews and doing the survey, I did come across views that were quite strong. But I mean, my starting point was that I was there to listen. You know, I wasn't there to tell them what to think in any way, right? So, and what I found among the sort of young people, because these were sort of 18, 19, 20-year-olds I was mainly speaking to, I mean, they were glad that somebody from the West was coming over to listen to them, because I think there is a sense in Russia that their point of view is not heard. You know, maybe you can come up with all sorts of reasons for that, but you know, they were quite happy to sit in cafes with me, and you know, I was just giving, you know, I had 4 or 5 questions, and I just gave very short questions and let them talk, and you know, sometimes, I mean, a lot of this negativity, you say anti-Western, and I mean, it's mainly anti-USA, to be frank. And I think perhaps there may have been some UK stuff in there. Well, I think me going as a British researcher, I wasn't expecting them to, you know, tell me what they thought about this country. That is, you know, you have to recognise that, you know, my background causes that bias in the research and reduces the likelihood that they're going to tell me about that. But I mean, they were very, very willing to tell me just what they thought of the USA, you know. So, so listening and that sort of willingness to listen is one thing. Language, I mean, we're funded by CELPAS, right? This is all part of the arrangement, and it's sort of language-based area studies, and I think, yeah, having competence in the language is really, really important. You know, it sort of shows that you're not just, you know, a random Westerner turning up to, you know, produce some kind of, you know, paid-for report that's just going to create more negativity about Russia, and you're actually somebody who is familiar with the culture, is familiar with the language, who spent time getting to know the place. So having competence in the language is important, and yeah, those are the
Well, I guess you need to think about your research, and there are 3 points I can recognize where you can, well, and you have power as well, and you have 3 points before your fieldwork, during your fieldwork, and after, where you can actually decide and use this power, what you want to do with it. And yes, you can make a decision before if you eliminate, well, you know, if you're not conducting this, so you're not gathering any information, because you know, for example, not only political, you know, some views on gender can be quite, well, upsetting for me as a researcher as well. So then during the research, which is kind of tricky, you know, if you want to redirect the interview or you just listen, and then it is also your power, because, you know, you're listening, you're controlling it in a way. And after, you can conduct the interview, but then will be your extreme case in your analysis, or will be just out of your analysis completely. So just, I think, your research question and what you want to achieve as a priority, and then you just decide.
Okay, let's once again take 2 or 3 people with questions. Firstly, Licha, and you and somebody else? No? Okay.
Yep. So I had a question for Rob. I was very interested in what we were talking about, your images, and what the images, the context of the images, and then what the images were made to say when they were translated into the media. And I was wondering whether you had, before going, while you were there, a clear, let's say, agenda, meaning there are certain images that I must take because those images have been requested to me directly or are going to sell, simply enough. And whether you felt that there were images that would have explained the context better but they were not sold to the media because they were not represented the image of Ukraine that was forming otherwise. So it's an ethical issue again, I guess. Yeah. So please, yeah. Oh no, sorry. Yeah. Because
Yeah, that seems like a straightforward
yeah.
answer.
Yes, I think a lot of people now unfortunately make a mistake in some ways of seeing what has already been photographed and conjuring up an idea of what things are going to be like when they get there. And then they feel like they have to reproduce that because it's been published. And you do end up with a lot of similar scenes being replayed. When I'm on assignment, I have to be where the action is perceived to be, and I'm not in a position in my career where I can not self-fund, go and then try to sell. Interestingly, after my December trip, I had some interest in my work for Kia, where I'd kind of gone outside of Maidan and done some work in the suburbs showing what the city was like during this time. But by the time it came around to publication, it was January and things had kind of blown up. So I think there is a space for giving maybe a bigger picture, but getting that out in time is very difficult because of I think the speed of the news cycle.
Okay, yeah, then I see you back soon. Go to the first, yeah.
My name is Daniel, and I studied conflict studies in King College, and I was in Maidan during the revolution as well, and I did a research about the conflict when Usman Kano, and also I got this from during Maidan, this press vest, and it felt really easy to just video and take pictures and everything. But my question is, now when I do my second research and then I go into more ATA zones, conflict areas between Russia and Ukraine, do I need to have some kind of press card or something from like you have like from Getty Images, or like you have, could I use King College or University as an endorsement for my
I was just talking. Someone asked me, I was talking about this just before we started. I was wondering whether King's College, your college is a King's College?
No, I'm a master's student.
Here.
King College.
Well, anyways, it's whether the institution would even allow you to go to these areas and then produce editorial work. From when I did my master's at the University of the Arts, they wouldn't approve any work you've done in a region that they deemed to be too dangerous. So I think that's the first question. Is whether you'll be able to use it towards your
When you think,
masters.
like for example, in Maidan, it felt, like you said, almost like a festival, even if it was violent in some points, because it was so easy to go around there and talk to people and interview people and take pictures. But now, when I go further into the conflict, do you think it's possible to go there and say, hi, I'm a student?
Yeah, but there are always situations where saying you're a student is beneficial. It's hard to know. I personally tell the truth when I'm working for a university that I to do it.
Always like a researcher rather than a student. It's also true and it sounds like that.
Yeah, I think when he's a researcher and maybe putting your camera away will work in your favour.
And in terms of the possibility of getting press accreditation when all you're actually there to do is to do research, I personally would possibly not recommend. I mean, I was in a similar I had similar options when I was doing my doctoral research, because I also was doing a bit of part-time work for the BBC, and when I went to Transnistria once, and one colleague said, oh, you should get BBC as sort of a credit unit or something. I don't know. They thought it would somehow give me more access, or I think that would have only caused me more problems if they think I'm a journalist. I think as a researcher, sometimes you're seen as more harmless than sort of journalists who it's also, you know, inaccurate. So, I mean, when I went to Belarus, I managed to get myself a visa that wasn't just a tourist visa, right? It was a visa to sort of, I was up technically going to present at a conference, so I was formally there as a researcher. And, you know, I think that's, in terms of, you know, complying with laws, which can at times be applied, you know, arbitrarily, it's probably best to stick as close to the truth as you can. It's my point of view, but I don't have massive experience. So.
I used to have a really small question for my use. It felt incredibly safe to work in the area of Ukraine. Is that like a forced thing that I got when I was there? Because people were so friendly, so helpful, very press, that easy to talk to, and even if it was like really turbulent at times. Is that how it is in, because I'm from Colombia and we work in a rural area in Colombia, and it's very well, and they're going really well in the Congo.
There are plenty of people in Donetsk who want to talk to you, if their area is being shelled. I think all I can say from Russia today is that the situation's changed very, very rapidly. And I don't want to tell you the situation is like now. It's going to be.
I also have a question to you. My name is Anna. I'm doing my master's in global migration in UCL. It's a little bit probably naive and a twofold question. First of all, you mentioned that images, they tell a story, and obviously these stories can be misrepresented by intentionally. Are you, as a photographer, bound by some sort of codes of ethics about how your images are afterwards used? And in second kind of follow-up question, did you ever find yourself in a situation where obviously there's two different sides to each story and your images can show it? Did you ever find that some of your photographs would go to Russia and Russian media to present one side and to Western media to present another side? Because during this conflict there was a lot of this same style images presented by two different media, a completely different way. But it's you, a photographer, who has probably the only moral right to judge which one presented it right.
I'm not sure I do. I think the ethics lie in the editors beyond. As long as my path to producing the image is ethical, the dissemination of it is beyond your control. And I think it comes down to the editorial line who decides to use your image. I suppose that applies specifically to working for news wires, which I did on occasion. If you're working more for yourself, yes, you can control perhaps the edit that you put together, which can show a leading narrative. But in terms of a single image, that's for someone to read. And I think for me the power of photography is that a photograph can ask a question and it doesn't necessarily have all the answers. Different people interpret it in different ways. For example, pictures of the guys on the front lines with neo-Nazi symbols on can be used by Russian media to fulfill this kind of directive, Ukrainian nationalism, the old narrative of World War II. And then it can be left out by other news outlets who want to perpetuate this pro-European movement. So that thing, well, a friend of mine says, when we have these kind of questions about things, well, this thing happened. So that's it happened. So anyway.
What I was, if you don't mind, I'll just really quickly clarify. When I was asking a question, I was having in mind a particular picture, to be honest, and that was a photograph that was of people crossing the border. And at that time, the photograph was published both by Ukrainian media and Russian media, but the name of the news was different. The Russian media presented it as these are refugees going from Ukraine to Russia, whereas I believe in reality it was refugees, or actually not refugees, but people going to Polish border, which is a busy borderline. And obviously in this case, the photographer is the only person who knows where exactly that photo was taken. And do you find yourself in such a situation where you have to clarify the context in order, or are you ethically obliged to clarify the context?
I'm not sure. It's a good question. I think if the photographer is to find out that this has happened, I'd hope that they would have at least an attempt to try and have that changed. But all you can do is, my side of things, is to take the picture in a way which was done professionally and to caption it appropriately. And I hope that whichever way whichever outlet you choose to get that image out will also do the same. I don't know of any specific guidelines which say you have to go and chase people who misuse your images. For example, I had a picture of a young man in central Kiev putting on a gas mask, and it ended up on a website talking about how bad does your farm smell. So that's a question of choosing who I work for and their clients. That example, I suppose the photographer might wish to have a word with the manager of that site.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Question? And then back. So.
My name is Cara, and I'm creating my question is the safety of the interviewers, but also those who are interviewed. For example, if you were to maybe interview some political activist or known critical journalist or some dissident in a regime that might not feel entirely comfortable with you going to interview these people, how would you do that? And would you protect yourself but also those who you're interviewing, or would you refrain from interviewing these people in this place?
Natalia, I am planning to conduct a study in Ukraine which would involve some form of qualitative data collection. And I am disputing with myself whether I should go for interviews and focus groups, and I'm wondering if you could maybe provide some insights as to what might work. I'm planning to interview department chairs in universities, and I would be interested to know what their views are about effective leadership in Ukraine. And such studies in other countries have used focus groups as the first approach to entry, and I'm not very clear on whether people will be willing to discuss whether, but do you think it's a sensitive topic? Would people be willing to discuss it in groups? Would it be a good idea to have people to work with chairs from a number of universities, or is it safe to have a focus group from the same institution? Would that make any difference?
Okay, maybe let's start with thinking about safety of our respondents. Safety in the field. Thoughts on that?
I would say again, I think we mentioned it before, but if you're say upfront who you are and be very open and keep your formal positions, don't try to maybe make friends with them or informalize your relationships in any way. And it's always up to you to decide how safe it is. It's kind of risky, but at least if everything is formalized, and you keep everything anonymous, so you guarantee their anonymity, confidentiality, and safety. There will be, I hope, same reaction towards you, and usually it works for me as well. Actually better than trying to find my own way to get to these people. And maybe have somebody on your side as well, just in case, who knows about it.
How much might it work perhaps that, I mean, often have a better sense themselves of the risks involved. So, you know, it might be that if someone felt that, you know, the risk was too high, they should hopefully say no, and you should, you know, accept that. But I think the important thing as a researcher is to make sure that your potential sort of participants know exactly what you're going to do with the information that they give you. So if, you know, if you're going to publish it, where are you going to publish it? Who's going to read it? Which languages are you planning to publish it? You know, sort of, so that they can take the decision for themselves, being fully informed. That, you know, effort is quite important. Yeah, just make sure they're making an informed decision and let them make their own, you know, choice regarding the same thing.
Rob, is there something about just photographic search people and data here? Or letting basically the people decide whether they want to be photographed or not?
Yes, I think as a rule, I don't try to hide from the rules. Or anyone would have said. You don't sly about what your motives are. I have to be a little vaguer about what's going to happen to the subject. And just say that it could go anyhow. Be happy with that. Perhaps the research topic, would you like to be more specific?
Yeah, I mean, you can be specific in saying, okay, this could end up anywhere. That's being specific in the sense of in itself, right? You're setting no bounds on where this information might end up. And it's better to say that than have them think, right, yes, my boss might read this and I would want that. And then, you know, so it's a question of being very open and sort of discussing it with them, perhaps. I mean,
You have more control over what
Yeah.
happens to the article, so I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, to a degree, yeah, you can be cited, and then you don't always know in advance who you're going to read. You might write a blog piece that you haven't been, you know, planning to, or you might want to keep that option open for yourself. So just as long as your participants are, you know, aware. And also, if you go, I think you have to be aware of, you know, the relative vulnerability perhaps of your participants, because I think when you go to the top of organisations, those people are generally less vulnerable to people, you know, perhaps of a lower, call it rank status, but, you know, I mean, I felt more comfortable talking to the editors of certain opposition-ish media in Belarus than talking to, you know, journalists lower down the pay scale, because, you know, if you're an editor of an opposition media in Belarus, you know, you're kind of up for that problems that you're going to face. You know what you're doing, and it didn't greatly increase his problems by talking to. I mean, the fact that he's, you know, publishing stuff that Lukashenko doesn't like is what was causing him his problems. But the fact that he's talking to me, so yeah, you could. I always felt more comfortable talking to people, you know, at the top. Yeah.
But actually, reaching the understanding of this, but yeah, it can end up anywhere. But really making them understand is more important than signing this, but they understand it. That's what is important, yeah, because we're blind, we do know what to do, we make a decision about it.
Also, in the UK data protection act sets very specific criteria how we need to handle data. For example, if you are at a UK university and you conduct research, any data that you collect is confidential. You're not allowed to bring outside the European Economic Area, maybe to Canada and Australia and New Zealand, but not to any other country which UK is deemed to be not safe in terms of where border guards are allowed to simply swipe your laptop and look at everything on it. So I think this is another level securing not getting your responsibility into danger. Now we come to you. You want to interview departmental chairs?
Yeah.
Where exactly? Is that in?
In Kiev.
What kind of organisation? The universities about university leadership?
Yeah, like all their views of what constitutes effective leadership from their point of view. Like here, for example, in the States, that wouldn't be a sensitive topic, but in Ukraine, with, you know, high levels of hierarchies,
Okay.
your views would that be a sensitive issue, and to what extent that would be willing to talk in focus groups as opposed to individual communities?
Do you know how well you know the university? Because when I think setting up a survey in Russia now, if I have an opportunity, I would actually go, whether it would be like an area, you know, for example, a particular district or an organization. And I do have connections with a certain number of universities. I've been there, I know people there, so I know, will it work for me to do a focus group? Because I know how they express their views, how they communicate with me or between each other, if there are potential points of conflict with them, not only related to politics. So if you kind of traveled there or seen it, maybe you would make a better informed decision. I know that this opportunity is not always in place, but overall, I would rather go, if I don't know anything, I would rather go for face-to-face interviews rather than focus groups, to be honest.
Otherwise, you also did focus groups for a PhD with teachers.
Not with cross-sectional.
Oh, correct, cross-sectional. Yeah.
If I could actually give you, if you're going to do focus groups, I would suggest you do it in existing peer groups. If you want people to actually say what they think, let them bring their work colleagues or people that they already know. If you bring them face to face with people that they don't know, like random samples or something, then they get done on. And you get less than you would put in.
I would also say, would it be even practical for them, like that all of them would have free time at the same time? Because I would imagine they are really busy. It might be difficult to set up a focus group because they would be busy.
I think I remember from me taking part in a focus group here in UCL and chatting to the guy who organised it. UCL had closed one, I forgot the name now, but it specialised in higher education research. He told me that focus groups above the level of postdocs are almost impossible to arrange, even if more than £100 are offered as compensation and free dinner or something like that. Of course, this UK context, I don't want to say this. So
I've been advised to prepare expensive gifts if I chairs.
Which raises a whole different ethics question. Also a serious one, but yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Well, if I can just jump in, because of my research on corruption in Ukraine, you don't give them any gifts, because that pretty much answers your question of why we have a good leadership. You can accept the gifts, but you can have different methodologies.
More questions? Insights?
We are actually, I think, out of the time, and I should set up wine.
Okay. Well, if there's wine, then we'll probably close here. I'd like you to give a hand to our three panelists. Thank you. And then follow on.